Hey guys, today we're going to be looking at solving equations with the variable on both sides of the equal sign. Let's go over a few quick details of how to work these problems out before we just jump into one. First thing we need to remember is opposite operations. Add and subtract, they're opposites. The opposite of multiply is divide. And then to work these equations out, we're going to be doing PEMDAS but backwards. So that's why I have it written backwards right here. Add and subtract will probably come first. Multiply and divide if there's exponents or parentheses. Okay, so we're going to be working it backwards to undo and figure out what the missing piece is. Variable is what we're solving for. It can be represented by any letter. It does not just have to be X. And then we're going to make sure that we bring variables together first. Okay, so we're going to be looking at equations that have a letter on both sides of the equal sign, and our goal is to figure out what does, in this case, X equal, and we've got to get all the X's on one side together. But first, let's look at what it looks like with algebra tiles. We have x plus 5 equals 3x minus 1, and all I want us to do is draw a picture of what this equation looks like. And then down at the bottom I have a key. A variable x will be like a rectangle, and then the ones will be like little squares. Now please do not think that these are base 10 blocks. They are not. These are algebra tiles. So on the left side, I see a single x. There's no number. We could think of that as 1x. So we're going to draw one rectangle here. And then it says plus 5. So then 5 little squares. And all these are positive. Equals, so on the other side of the equal sign we're going to have 3 x's, which are 3 rectangles. And then minus 1, so it's a little square, but this one is negative. Okay, so this is what the picture of this equation would look like. Now I want us to go to a different page, and I'm actually going to solve it using algebra tiles first. So again, we have 1x, okay, green is positive, plus 5, so these yellow squares, these are positive 5, and then equals 3x, and then red is minus 1. Our goal is to get the x's all on one side and by themselves. So I want to get rid of this single x and somehow bring it over here to the other side. And this is a positive 1x, and so if I wanted to cancel that out, I would add a negative 1x to it. Positive 1 minus 1, that cancels out to 0. Now whatever we do to one side of the equal sign, we have to do to the other. So I added a negative 1 to both sides, and that cancels these out. Alright, now I have the x's gone on the left side, and we have 2x on the right side. The next step is to start canceling out some of these 1's. So since the x's are on the right side, I'm going to cancel this minus 1 out by bringing a plus 1 next to it. Negative 1 plus 1, that cancels out to 0. But then again, whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So I added another positive 1 to the left side, and this cancels out. Now we're left with 2 x's and then 6 1's. So I want to try to figure out what does each x represent. And if you group these together, it looks like 1x equals 3, and then 1x equals 3. So that was just simply dividing them into two separate groups since there were 2 x's. and each x is equal to 3 ones. So let's try this equation with actually working it out. X plus 5 equals 3x minus 1. And I'm going to draw a line at the equal sign. That helps me out to know whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. Now, if you remember when we were using algebra tiles, I think we ended up subtracting this x out, and we had to do it on both sides. And so this is a positive 1x, and to get rid of positive 1x, I'm going to subtract x. And that cancels out to 0. And so then I'm left with 5 equals 3x minus 1x, that is 2x. And then bringing down the minus 1. Now this is just a normal two-step equation from here on out. I see a minus 1 that I want to get rid of, because again our goal is to get x or the variable by itself. So this is minus 1, the opposite of minus is plus. I'm going to add 1 on both sides. Negative 1 plus 1, that cancels out to 0. 5 plus 1 is 6. And then we're left with 2x equals 6. To get rid of the 2, remember from the algebra tiles we separated it into two groups, and that's like division. 2x, when the number and the letter are next to each other, that means multiply. So I'm going to divide by 2 on both sides. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 2 divided by 2 cancels out to 1, but that x is still there. So that would be equal to 1x or just x. Alright, let's try another one. Now, these next two problems you're going to be familiar with. These are the ones that we wrote an equation to the other day. We looked at the dog sitting places and then the water tank, and that's why I already have some of the work here, because it was from how we set it up an equation from the other day. And now we're actually going to solve. So 15 plus 3h is equal to 21 plus 1h. That was the equation we came up with. So let's solve for h. Again, we want to get the h's by themselves. I'm noticing that there's an h on each side of the equal sign, right here and right here, and we want to combine those two together. So we've got to get rid of one of them. Now I'm noticing positive 1h. I want to go ahead and subtract 1h from this side, and we have to keep it the same and do it to the other side as well. 1 minus 1 cancels out to 0. 3 minus 1 is 2h, and then we still have the plus 15 equals 21. Now we want to get rid of this positive 15, and to get rid of that, we're going to subtract 15 from both sides, and that cancels out to 0. 21 minus 15 is 6. 2h equals 6. And then 2h, that means multiply, so the opposite of multiply is divide by 2 on both sides. 2 divided by 2 cancels out to 1. So h is equal to 6 divided by 2 is 3. Now let's just practice plotting this on the number line. So here's my number line, 3. These tick marks are counting by 2s. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So 3 would be in between the 2 and the 4. And I'm going to label it H. So from the other day, we were talking about how many hours would the total fee by the two companies be the same. Well, at 3 hours, each of those companies would cost the same amount of money. Alright, let's try one more. So we have 256 minus 3w equals 384 minus 5w. And I'm going to draw my line at the equal sign because whatever we do to one side, we have to do to the other. And let's combine our w's together. I'm seeing a negative 3w and a negative 5w. I'm going to go ahead and add a 5w to both sides. We could have added 3w to both sides, but I knew that I wanted to add the 5w instead, because if I do negative 5w plus 3w, that's going to give me a negative answer, and I really just am trying to avoid negatives, but you can do it that way. Negative 5 plus 5, that cancels out to 0. And then negative 3 plus 5, that would be a 2w. And that's positive. And 256, bringing that down, and 384 on the other side. Now I want to get the numbers together. So this is a positive 256. The opposite of positive or like adding would be to subtract. When we subtract, that cancels out to 0, and whatever we do to one side, you have to do to the other. So let's see what we get here. 14 minus 6 would be 8. 7 minus 5 is 2, and then a 1 equals 2w. Okay, so 2w, that means multiply when the number and the letter are next to each other. So the opposite would be to divide by 2 on both sides. 2 divided by 2 cancels out to 1. The w is still there. And then we need to do 128 divided by 2. Let me show you a shortcut. 2 goes into 12 6 times. We're done with that part. 2 goes into 8 4 times. So w is equal to 64. So let's practice putting it on the number line. Let's find 64. Well, here's 60. Remember how I said we're counting by 2. So 62 and 64 would go right there, and this is w. So if you remember from the other day, it was talking about gallons leaking out of a water tank, and it was talking about weeks, so that's why we use w. And it says after how many weeks will the amount of water in the two tanks be the same? So at 64 weeks, they would have the same amount of water. Okay guys, that is solving equations with the variable on both sides. Don't forget, you want to get all the letters on one side of the equal sign. You want to combine the same letter together first, and then start working with the numbers that don't have a variable with it. Remember opposite operations. Remember we kind of added or subtracted first and then multiplied and divided second. I hope this helps. Thanks for watching.